get it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the SchuZ Show. I'm your host, SchuZ Shoemaker. Joining me to kick off today's show is a man that is tied for the fourth most blocks in a single season by volunteer. He's one of the top premier defenders in all the nation heading into next season. That is Felix Okpara. Felix, appreciate you taking time to come on today, man.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, man. It's been a minute since I actually talked,
For
and
sure.
I'm excited, I'm happy for you too.
Absolutely, man. Happy for you as well, man. And as you were saying, I was looking back at it. It was June 21st, 2020, almost exactly 5 years to the day that you last were on the show. And so a lot has happened to this point in time. But overall, I want to start off with this, man. You're obviously going through an offseason right now. You returned to Tennessee. What's the offseason been like so far for yourself?
Man, it's been tough, man. It's been good work.
Mm,
We've been here since May, beginning of June, and it's just I think Tennessee basketball. We having new guys. We have a completely new roster,
right.
and it's just building that chemistry from the beginning. I think that's what they have us come in early, and work together and go through adversity together. So and when it's time to we step on the court, and when it's time for the season to start, we don't look like we don't know each other out there.
Right. Part of this roster you just talked about, it's going to look completely different. You talk about last year's team. Chaz obviously moving on. Zakai's moving on. Igor's moving on. Jordan, J.M.I., Darlingston, like a lot of guys moving on. And then you guys also did recruit guys like Jacoby Gillespie, obviously Jalen Carey, Amari Abram, obviously some top recruits, as well as some returners. So this team is going to look a lot different next year. From what you've seen early on so far, how do you like the way the roster's coming together?
Man, it's coming good. I
Mm,
feel like we have a good front court, and also having good size at the back court too. Uh, good side of the front court and good side at the back court too.
right.
And I think with also we having a really good freshman, Nate, who can come up, and start off good for us. I think for us it's just for guys just figuring that role quick. Because last year we know we had older guys who knew the roles on the team. I think
Mhm.
this year is just trying to have guys just dial in and just figure out what they need to do for the team to have good success.
You brought up Nate. Obviously, I know a lot of fans are very excited to see him this year. He's obviously one of the top recruits, could very well be one of the top picks in next year's draft. How special is he so far? And how excited should fans be to go watch Nate?
He's a very special kid. Definitely exciting to watch. Very athletic, can shoot the ball, and
Mhm.
also very very unselfish player. He likes to pass the ball, really good passer. I think that's one of his underrated, talents. And it's going to be very, very good for us. I think you're going to see, Nate pretty tall too. He's about 6'10", 6'11". Most
Right.
people don't know that, and it's going to be funny seeing me and Nate, ball screen because I'm almost 7 foot 6'11" and a half, and Nate is like right at 6'11" or 6 and a half. He's just a tall ball screen going on this year, and it's going to be good for us too because I think for him, he can also switch up, a little bit guard, like 1 through 4,
Right.
and this summer is going to be good for him putting on weight and just getting stronger.
We're gonna get into this team a little bit more, and then more towards the end of the show. But I want to be able to get to know you a little bit better because, as I said, it's been a while since you've been on here. I want people to know your story, and so I know it's pretty well known. But obviously, you're not from America. You grew up out there in Nigeria, and you grew up playing soccer out there. So when did basketball get introduced in your life? When did you start making that transition?
Man, I've told the story a lot of times, man. I really, it wasn't like something I thought I was gonna do. It was just someone just came up to me and like, "Oh, you pretty tall. You should just go try basketball."
Right.
And I didn't even play organized basketball in Nigeria. I played basketball for about, I would say, a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
If I got a scholarship to come play in Chattanooga, Tennessee, at Hampton Heights, and I think for me picking up basketball a little and at a young age, and I fell in love with the sport when I first picked up the ball, and after then it just constant work, and just getting better and getting better, and also having good people around me, push me and push me in the right direction.
What's crazy about that situation there is that, like you said, you didn't play basketball for a long time growing up. You only were doing it for so much time, and then you make the big life changing decision to come out to America. Then, how did you make the decision? Come straight. You're 14 years old. That had to be a tough decision on yourself. How did you feel so confident you want to go out there and pursue your basketball dreams? Then at that point,
It was, obviously I wanted, I think every kid dream in Nigeria is to, try to come, overseas and trying to have a better life and better education.
Okay.
I think also it was that's also pushing factor, and also my parents, the same thing. If you know anything about Nigerian or African parents, they want you to go have the best education, try to go to college, try to
Right.
get a job. I think that was also a pushing factor for me too. And they were like, it's gonna be good for you, you go over and just, get education, get to college, and
Mm.
that's all they wanted. But me personally, it was just like I wasn't even really thinking too far into the future. I was just focused on, man, I want to get, I love this sport, and I want to see how far I can go with this. I want to see, you know, what I can learn. It was just for me, just I want to learn something new every day, and it just stacked up good for me. A couple of years come.
When that all was going down, you said you obviously were just trying to get kind of stay in the moment at the time, saying, "I want to see what I can get out of the sport." What would your expectations have been? Did you have any expectations? Like, could you have imagined if I would have told you at that point that you're going to go down as one of the top, potentially going to go down this next season and have one of the most blocks in single season history? Already just did was fourth all time last season. Like, did you ever expect to be this good of a player at that point in time?
Nah, most definitely not. It's crazy too because most times, I sit down, I talk with my brothers and my family. I'm like, man, it's crazy how like I just got better each year, and it's just like surreal because just first time I picked up my first offer in high school, it felt like the best thing ever.
Hmm.
And after that, I just kept on getting better, and it's just like then I was getting invited into camps, being one of the top players in the country, and and then going to a good college,
Right.
just playing at a big stage, and it's just it's God too. When I look back at it, and I'm really appreciative of the time I spent and people who spent time invested in me, and I think also my family too was a pushing factor too. Just getting me through it every day.
Was there ever a moment when you look back on life that you felt like everything kind of came together and you said, "You know what? I'm starting to feel really confident in myself. I feel like I can go become a good Division 1 basketball player." When did that kind of settle in for yourself?
Um, I would say ended up my sophomore year because
Okay.
that's when I started to pick up, and I was like, I started getting a lot of offers, and I was like, man, I want to be a. I think that was when I was like, I think I want to play in the NBA. That was kind of the
Mm,
moment because I saw how good I was, and I wasn't even at my peak, and I was like, I can really get better because there's so
mhm.
much for me to learn. 'Cause not playing the sport for long. Just watching film. It's just a lot to learn playing basketball, and I'm still learning because most of this, most of basketball is really, mental. It's
Yeah.
IQ. Just reading the game and everything. I think that was the moment I was like, yeah, I can really play in the NBA, or I want to play in the NBA, or I want to go to a big college and just, show my talents.
The other component I wanted to ask you about was the overall just lifestyle aspect, because obviously basketball was why you came to America, but then you still have life outside of basketball, and that had to be a culture shock. Obviously, growing up in Nigeria, then coming to America, you're 14 years old, an entirely new environment, family situations, everything. How did you deal with that? Was that difficult for yourself?
Yeah, it was. It was
Yeah.
yeah. The first year was, was really tough. After it kind of felt like I was in a dream for a couple of months.
Mm,
Then I just kind of like it just felt like it is what it is. That's why I said to myself. But
okay.
it was tough, and I also had what really helped me was the other kids they have from Nigeria, from other countries. At Hampton High, you just seeing other kids who can relate to what I'm going through.
Right.
I can learn from. They had older guys from Nigeria too. I could just ask questions and learn from, and they just tell me how it goes over here, and also just calling my brothers, calling my parents. Every time I get the chance.
When did you feel like it started to be a little bit more second nature to yourself? I felt like, you know what, I feel like I'm a little bit at home. I feel like this isn't as difficult on myself. When did you just get accustomed to everything?
Just having, I was grateful to get put with a good family here in Tennessee,
Okay.
and just having that support from them. Just them just dying. Pretty much treating me like one of the kids.
Mm,
and just doing everything a real family would do. And I call them my family. I call them my mom and dad. They're my second parents,
right.
and also my second family. Just having siblings, outside of the ones I have in Nigeria, it was just good, and I just felt at home. It was just good having that relationship over here.
Obviously, there's been many other guys gone through similar situations as you have gone through. And for those that's going to go in the future, what would you say is the biggest advice? If you could say to one guy that's coming over that's in a similar situation as yourself, what's the one thing of advice you'd say in this transition period, whether that be on or off the court, whatever it is? What's the biggest piece of advice you'd give them?
Man, I would just tell them, just take your time and be patient. 'Cause I feel like you see it a lot with a bunch of other guys coming. They want everything at once.
Mm,
Because I feel like it's the internet too, because they see everything on the internet and they're like, oh, I want this lifestyle. But
mm.
at the same time, people who had that lifestyle had to go through some things. They had to sacrifice a bunch of things to get there. I, I'll just tell them, just gotta be patient, man. Just walk your butt off and just be patient, and everything is going to set up right for you.
You said a little bit ago about how God's helped you get to this point as well. Take us to that component. How much have you been able to rely on Him, and how big has He been for you as just having that trust in Him throughout this journey?
Man, it's been really good. I came from a Christian background back in Nigeria, and
Hmm.
also my family here in Tennessee are also good big Christ followers, and it's just someone I rely on every day. Wake up, say my prayers. Anytime I'm going through something hard, I talk to God,
Mm.
and just knowing I have someone to back me up. Whatever situation I end up in.
Looking back throughout your journey, what's the biggest moment that you've been able to rely upon God and He's helped you out in that situation?
Um, Man, just making big decisions.
Right.
Whether is it coming in comedians college, or or leaving a college, or even in a game, just keeping me safe, from injuries.
Right.
I'm really grateful. It's my fourth year playing college basketball. I really haven't had any you know major injuries, and I'm grateful. That's all God.
Hmm.
And it's just I just talk to him whenever I just feel down.
I want to go into your high school journey. We first started talking with each other, and you came on the show right when you're at Hamilton Heights, right when those offers started coming in for yourself, your sophomore, junior season. But you did make a transition then later on to Link Academy. What led to that decision? Why did you want to make that move for your final year of high school?
Um, it was a lot going on.
Okay.
It was I remember, the link was pretty much, the guys I played AAU ball with, and we had so much chemistry on that team.
Mm,
And I think that was one of the deciding factors. Other one was just trying to get me ready and just be able to compete against, good players every day. And not saying Hampshire don't have or didn't have the best players at that time. It was just being able to compete with players, that I know that's gonna go hard every day, or it's gonna bring it every day, and just learning from them and just being able to be able to play for something bigger, like a championship,
right.
and just something just try to get me ready for college. And those were just the factors I looked at. And it was definitely, hard for me to make that decision, because I definitely want to stay with Hampton. This family, a lot of everything I knew about basketball came from them. So it was tough, but finally I had to make it, and I think it worked out good for me.
Something I want to ask you about is that situation you just were kind of discussing. There's going to be tough decisions that you have to make sometimes, but it's the best decision for yourself, even if it's not easy. And I think anyone that's successful, especially basketball players, will be put in those situations. How have you learned to say, you know what, even though it might be difficult, I'm going to make the right decision for myself and kind of push myself in those situations?
Um, how I do it is, I just tell myself, you don't got to be comfortable. It's simple with basketball. If you're too comfortable with someone else and you just feel like you just want to, if you know it is a good decision and you want to make it, but you just too comfortable, you just to move, or go somewhere else. I think you definitely have to, you know sit down and talk to other people. And me having other people to talk to was also good. You just got
Mhm.
to have couple of people you can talk to, like a tight circle, and they
Right.
can give you decision and make it like keep it real with you. If they're telling you about to make a bet, they're gonna tell you if it's good or bad. And also just also having God, just praying to God and just trying to lead you to the right path or give you a sign to
Right.
what decision, what path you need to take.
Well, let's get into one of those other first big decisions you had to make as well when you were talking about your college decision. You had offers from all over the country. Just to list a couple of them: Florida, Ole Miss, Texas, Tennessee was in the mix, Illinois. We know you ended up choosing Ohio State, though. What was it about Ohio State, Chris Holtman at that point in time, that won you over and said, you know what, this is where I believe I should start my college career off at?
Um, Chris is a very, very good coach. Chris Holmes, I love him to today.
Hmm.
Every now and then we text. But I think for me it was just looking at the chemistry that team had when I went on my visit, and just looking at how you know he kind of like takes players and like kind of like change each year to get better.
Yeah.
And for me also, I was also looking to where I could play. I looked at the team. They had, the only big they had at that point was Zed Key. And
Hmm.
it was just being able to know I had someone I could learn, a veteran I could learn under and grow. And it just kind of, and I also prayed to God about it. I just felt like, it was the right decision, the right place for me to be at.
When you remember back, was there a number two or three option? Like, if there was it between, obviously, we know Ohio State's the school you chose, but did you have a second favorite school at that point in time?
Yeah, I mean, before Ohio State, I really wanted to go to Texas,
Okay.
but that was when they had Shocker.
Hmm.
But I think he got fired before, I came on a
Yeah.
visit or something. I think then I was like, yeah, and then I don't think that path was right for me.
Gotcha.
Then I just kind of like explored my options again.
Well, let's head into your freshman season. You ended up starting 11 games that year, playing 35 of them that season. You had an overall pretty darn good season for a freshman. What was that first year of college basketball like for yourself?
Man, it was intense. It was tough. It was a lot of growing. I had to grow up, real fast because Zach Key, he came up with an injury and kind of like beginning of this Big Ten. Uh, I think it was beginning of Big Ten, like
Yeah, I think it was like December, early January. Yeah.
yeah. It was some that time, and that's when I had to like step up and grow, and it was hard because the pace. That's what every freshman will come in. They want to play, but the pace is different from high school,
Mhm.
and just how detailed everything is, and how little mistakes can like lead to a team winning or losing.
Right.
And it was and what really got me through it was having other freshmen around me too. We had Bruce who was starting, and Bryce, Roddy. Just a couple of those guys, who's never been in that situation. I could just be like, be comfortable and
Mhm.
be like it's okay to make mistakes. But it was a good learning experience.
I have to ask about that freshman class because now we look back at it, it's quite the class. Obviously, we know Bryce went one and done. He went off. He's in the NBA right now, Utah. Talk about yourself. One of the top rim protectors, one of the top defenders in all the country. Bruce is going to be one of the top guards in the country this year. Roddy's an incredible player as well right now. Like, you guys all panned out to have good careers so far at this point. How special was that freshman class?
Man, it was good. It was something. Thinking back at it, we had a really good chemistry, really connected. And like I said, this is our first time there, so we had to grow, together and learn together.
Hmm.
And we still call every now and then and talk, but it was. I'm happy for them. They definitely really really good players, and I hope they just keep continue to do their thing and just keep getting better.
You also brought up the point when Zedke got hurt, it throws you into the fire in a sense. You had to learn quickly, you had to adapt quickly because now all of a sudden you were being relied upon as the guy at the down low at least. And so that's obviously a tough situation for a lot of freshmen to get put into. You did really good that time overall, though, when you got that opportunity. How important is it to stay ready, and just how big also was that for your development as a player to say, okay, you know what? Whether you're ready or not, you're gonna be thrown into the fire. It's time to go develop quickly now.
Um, it's very, very important to stay ready, and
Right.
I think I was for the most part. But it's one of those situations where they throw you in the water, you float or you sink,
Mm.
and I think I floated a couple of times, and sometimes I just I forgot to kick my legs, but it's all part of the process. But also Zed was also there at the bench, talking to me, and just happened. We had a bunch of older guys too, just who would just watch film or talk to me and just tell me what to do. It was good.
So if I were to ask you your biggest lesson that you learned that freshman season, what would that be?
Biggest lesson I learned.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I would say being a good communicator.
Mm.
Because that's the center. You got to be able to talk. You see everything, ball screen and everything. And it's just I think that was the biggest thing for me. Just because I don't really I'm a guy that don't really talk a lot.
Right.
Some people would say, but when you get to know me, I'm actually I talk pretty good. But it was just because it was just a lot going on the court. Like I would forget to talk sometimes. Like call ball screens or call. It was just one of those things. I think after that I did a pretty good job my sophomore year, just talking more and just being our voice on the court.
So then I want to ask you about Chris Holtman. Obviously, we'll get into your sophomore season, what happened there in a moment, no, though. But overall, you got to spend about a year and a half with him. What was your favorite memory that you created with Coach Chris Holtman?
Favorite memory. Man, I think one I remember clearly was when he we had our foreign trip
Hmm.
and we had Bahamas, I think, and we
Okay.
were on a boat in the middle of like the ocean, and he just kind of pushed me in because we had to do like a team bonding, like we had to jump in the water. And if you know me, I don't know how to swim. I had a life vest on, so yeah, don't yeah, I had a life vest on, but he kind of pushed me in, and it was fun, but almost yeah, I thought it was the end. But I think that was the only moment like I really like, and every day too was good with him, just learning from him. But that was just the one I could picture in my head real quick.
All right. Well, let's head into that sophomore season. You were put into a very interesting situation when you talk about the coach getting, parting ways mid-season. It's always a difficult thing for a locker room. How did you go through that situation? What was it like experiencing where you had Coach Chris Holtman obviously part ways and then Coach Diebler take over?
It was interesting, and it was hard to see that because I I don't think I've ever seen or heard of anything like that before. But it was just one of those moments where a team either make or break. I think we came together and just kind of like just try to finish the year strong. It was tough seeing Holtman leave. We definitely really loved Holtman, but I feel like the players and Dibble did a good job finishing the season.
When you are in that situation, obviously, you've already said it many times, you had a great relationship with Coach Holtman. Were you shocked at when that happened then?
Um, yeah, yeah, it was shocking because how the internet be. They had a lot of rumors out there he was getting fired, and he came over and kind of clarified with us he wasn't getting fired, and
Mm.
it just kind of happened, and it was just it was surprising. And I remember that day. It was Valentine's Day too, so it was surprising, and we had to keep going. You know, that's what we did.
I feel like it's very often that fans, media even will look at a situation and they don't necessarily look at the personal relationship component. Obviously, people look at it and some people might have said, you know what, they didn't want him there or whatever the case might be. But when you talk about a locker room, that impacts you guys differently. There's relationships involved. How difficult was it for yourself personally, as you have your coach that you obviously loved a lot, get moved on from, you have to change mid-season? What was it like from a relational standpoint and also just a personal, your own self relationship standpoint?
Um, it was like I said, it was hard.
Hmm.
It was it was just one of those points where you're like, we were just kind of like we thinking, if everything was was worth it. Like you were like, man, so what do we do? Do we just stop playing, or do we just, you know, we had a couple of guys just trying to figure out if they want to hit the portal, or
Yeah.
it was just tough. The team was just kind of like scattering, and it's not what you want from a team at that point in the season. So it was just hard to see them fire him kind of like mid season, or kind of like towards the end. I feel like this year, I wish it would have been done a different way, but it wasn't. But
That was going to be
I'm
my
happy.
follow up question for yourself. If you were in the position and if you could have made a decision, like let's say that the decision was going to be made, Chris Holtman was obviously going to be let go. Would you have preferred to have had that happen after the season as opposed to mid-season?
I think after the season was a reasonable, right thing to do.
Right.
It's mid season, that's kind of like the players loses focus,
Hmm.
and they don't have a reason to play no more. To say
Yeah.
that was how we were feeling. You guys wasn't practicing like hard as they wanted to, and I mean Jay came in and stepped up. He did a good job, brought everyone together. But
Hmm.
once that happened, it was just like guys were like kind of like scattering.
Mm.
But
When everything happened, did you already know at that point in time that you were going to be entering the portal to see what's available for yourself, or when did you officially say, you know what, in your mind, you said, okay, this is now the time I want to move on?
I wasn't even thinking about a porter. I was just like everyone was just in shock. We were just trying to figure out why it happened.
Okay.
And the portal was different after the season because I wasn't really thinking about the portal for real.
Okay.
I don't
If
think anyone was thinking about the portal for real.
if Coach Holtman was still in place, if he didn't get let go, he was going to return then for what would have been your junior season. Would you possibly still be at Ohio State, or do you feel like that was something you would have considered anyways, regardless of what would have happened with Coach Holtman?
Um, I think I would have considered it, regardless. Yeah. I think it was to a point where I was like, I just, we had a good season at Ohio State. It wasn't the best season, we went on. It was a stretch, in both seasons, freshman and sophomore year, where we, were winning games, and it was tough for the players mentally. So it was, I was just like, you know, I love to win. I think every basketball player loves to win,
Yeah.
and it was just hard saying, and one of my biggest goals was trying to make it to the March Madness, which I did this recent year, and I'm really grateful and excited for it. But it was just tough saying, just having not making it to the March Madness 2 years in a row. But I definitely would have considered it.
Okay. Well, let's head into that transfer portal process. We know the end result. You become a Tennessee Volunteer. When did you know Tennessee was the right school for you? What was about Coach Rick Barnes' program that ultimately won you over?
It's winning culture, and also just his resume, the amount of guys he had, on his resume.
Hmm.
So I just felt like it was the right spot for me, and everything just kind of set up right to. They had a bunch of guys leaving. They had a center spot open. You don't see that very often.
Right.
A big high programs. I just felt like it was a sign God was showing me.
When
So
you when you look back at that situation, was there a second favorite school you had, or what was it about that process? Did Tennessee just pretty much blow you out of the water? Say, this is the school by far for myself.
um, there were a bunch of options, but it was just I only took my first visit was Tennessee,
Right.
and at that point I was like, I don't think I want to because I'm not a big fan of visits
Mm.
because even when I was in high school, I only took two visits. It's a lot, man. It's a lot of information, a lot of things to think about. I just it messes with your head too at some point. I just wanted to just get it all done, get it finished, and also it was better because I was way closer to home, Chattanooga,
Right.
and it's just being able to for my parents come watch me play and my siblings come watch me play. So I just love the guys they had, the locker room guys. They had a really good. a bunch of really good guys. So I just feel like it all set up right for me.
One thing about Coach Rick Barnes that I know he's a very strong believer. I know he's a very good man of God as well. How big of an impact did that have in your decision to go to Tennessee?
Obviously, it was definitely up there,
Hmm.
and just as believe also, and it's one of those guys. He shows us every day. He's not one of those guys that kind of like showed up outside and inside. He just kind of like changes up. Coach Ron's the same outside as the way he is inside,
Hmm.
and it's just good to have a coach who has good faith, and he just makes the team a lot better.
What would you say has been your favorite memory that you've had with Coach Rick Barnes to this point in time?
My favorite memory.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's a lot. You never know you never know what you get from Rick Barnes and having practice. But I would say when I first got here, it's just him spending time with me in the gym and just working on my shot, and just I think that was a good memory. I remember.
All right. I wanted to ask you about that shot. We've seen you hit the three ball before, not a lot before, but you have hit it before. And so I'm curious, when you talk about this upcoming senior season, is there a chance that we could see you shoot more three balls?
Uh, maybe, but that's not really the biggest part of my concern right now. But maybe we've talked about with coach, and he is all for it, but right now, I'm not really too concerned about that. I'm just more focused on getting better, scoring inside, and just playmaking, and just uh, being a good rebounder.
All right. Well, let's head into last season because you guys go through an incredible year. And last year, when you talk about an Elite Eight run, obviously you guys were taking part in what is my opinion, at least one of the greatest single season conferences that we've seen in a very, very long time, maybe one of the best ever in the SEC. What was last year like?
Man, it was a dogfight in the SEC.
Hmm.
Every game felt like a uh, every game felt like a Elite Eight game, and it was just like it was good to we knew we were gonna get everyone best shot every night. And we also I feel like we were prepared as a team for it too.
Hmm. What would you say was your favorite game from last season?
My favorite game, oh, again, I get back in Florida.
Hmm.
I was definitely one of those, and it was my favorite game in fact because we were limited to we didn't have Sakai or Igor, you know,
Right.
so we had I think 7 guys playing, and we just out there just giving our all.
When you look at the way the SEC was built last year, do you believe that was the best conference that we've seen in at least the past 20, 25 years in a single season?
Yeah, most definitely, no doubt. Because yeah, no doubt.
I also want to
We
ask
had.
you, or what was it? My bad.
I was just saying we had also the best players in the country too,
Hmm.
best coaches, and it's just like I said, just everyone bring their all every game. So
For yourself personally, you had a really seemed like a turning point when you got to conference play. You're good, obviously, the beginning portion of the season, but something almost flipped and it felt like you turned into one of the premier big men, especially at the defensive end of the ball, the second half of the season. Would you say as an accurate statement, like, do you feel like something clicked when you got to conference play and all of a sudden you felt like a lot more comfortable or something's kind of settled down? Or what was it about that transition you'd say in the midseason?
man, it was tough. Yeah, I get asked that a lot too. It was just the fact, it's obviously hard coming to a new program
Right.
and just figuring out how everything works. It was tough. I think because I ain't never played for Rick Barnes before,
Hmm.
and I had other play. The other guys who play for him kind of like they tell you what to expect, but they don't really pinpoint what to expect for real. I think for me, it was just building my trust with with coach, and just him figuring out mm, what kind of player how they can really utilize me. We practice every day.
Right.
And he knows how everything goes in practice, but when it comes to games, it's different in games, obviously. But I think for me, it's just figuring out what I can do, and figuring out what coach really want me to put it, just buying into my role. I think that's the best way to put it. Just buying into my role.
Okay.
And it was kind of tough at the beginning of the season because I was trying to figure out, you know, what I was gonna do
Hmm.
to help the team because everyone on the team had a role.
Right.
And finally, I kind of figured it out, kind of like halfway in, and ever since then, Rick Vaughn just started getting comfortable with me and just having more confidence in me.
Last year, you had a lot of great teammates. One guy I want to ask you about, SchuZ who's going to be drafted most likely in the next week or two. I think it's about 8, 9 days now to the draft. When you talk about him, you've experienced him in the locker room, on and off the court. For whatever NBA
Mm-hmm.
team ends up taking him, what are they going to be getting in him?
Really good kid.
Mm,
Good player, really smart. Hard worker, and also he's just unselfish. Obviously we know he can shoot the ball, but he likes to win. He's gonna do whatever it takes for his team to win, and also trying to get everyone else involved while doing it.
mm. Well, I want to get into this upcoming season for yourself now. We already talked about your offseason. Obviously, you've had a good offseason so far at this point. But if we go back a couple months ago, Rick Barnes made a statement about you, and I'm just going to read it out right now. He said, I'm excited about Felix and how much he improved this year. I think he's going to take another big step. I do. When you hear Rick Barnes say that about yourself, what goes through your mind?
Just like I said, it's just how comfortable and how he had the confidence he had in me has grown.
Mm,
And I started watching film with him. Just figuring out you know new shots. Where I can get to my spots and get comfortable scoring. Just running plays for me. I think with this new team, I'm pretty much the only returning starter, and a lot is definitely going to be asked from me, and I'm excited for it. And also me being an older guy and being a leader of the team, that's what I plan on doing this whole year, and just being a good leader and just teaching the younger guys and also the new guys coming from the portal. You know, and I'm excited for it. I definitely love Rick Barnes, and I think this season is going to be good for us.
I'm excited for yourself. I know fans are excited as well. I already said last year you are already solidified yourself as one of the top premier defenders in the entire country. What can we expect for senior season version of yourself? What will you be bringing improvement wise? Like what can we expect from you in your senior season now?
Just just being the same dog I am, defensively, being able to switch up more this year, you know, and also just being a really good finisher and rebounder.
Okay. As for the team, I know we addressed it a little bit in the beginning of the show, but obviously this team could be very talented. It's still to be determined from people looking inside because so many changes occurred. But how special do you think this team can be? Because you've seen last year's team. You know what a great Elite Eight team can look like. How special can this year's roster be?
It's going looking at it. Like I said in the beginning, we have the right pieces. We
Okay.
got a good point guard. We have good size in the post. We have about four guys. We can switch up in the post. We have good wings, good shooters. I feel like if everyone just buy into the role, it's gonna be good.
What would you say for yourself? Your 5 biggest goals for this upcoming season, whether that be team wise, personal wise, whatever it's going to be. What are your 5 biggest goals that you have set for the season?
Personally, getting one, I definitely need to get more stronger, put on some weight. That's a plan. Also, just learning the game more, just watching film, whether it's with Bonds or any other coaches around. Also, just getting better, like scoring inside. Working. I've been working on my jumper all around. just having a move I can go to.
Okay.
And I've been working on on that all summer for being a good leader and just being that guy. The young guys can come out to and ask questions and being that voice on the team. You know, and five, just I would say, just trying to be a pro as much as I can.
All right.
Just doing the right things. Just showing, if showing up early to practice, just being a good example where young guys can just look at and just be like, he's definitely doing the right thing. Like I probably need to copy some of the stuff he's doing.
What's awesome about what you just talked about there is when we discussed your freshman season, you said one of the biggest things you grew in was the ability to communicate and talk. We fast forward now to your senior season. You're obviously just talking about the fact that you want to be one of the leaders, both by example, vocally, and so on and so forth. Has this become an easy transition now? And do you feel like you're confident and comfortable at this point in your career now saying, you know what, I'm ready to be that leader? I know I'm going to be the only returning starter from this team. Do you feel confident, comfortable being that leader now?
Yeah, most definitely.
Hmm.
It's a role that I have to do it. I have to be that leader for the team,
Right.
and I definitely love being a leader, and also just being a good example too. And also just last year just how we had good leaders on the team. We had Zakai, we had Jemai.
Hmm.
Just looking back and just listening to what they said and just trying to copy, what just beats and pieces from it.
Mm.
So
A few things before I let you go, Felix. One of which is I was going to ask you a little bit ago, but the NIL component. Obviously, now you've been in the whole early stages now. What NILs look like at the college basketball scene. When you
mhm.
look back at your overall commitment to Tennessee originally, now obviously deciding to come back to school for another year, how much of a role does NIL play for you and yourself personally?
um obviously it's really good for the athletes,
Hmm.
but it wasn't a big component, me transferring. But I think athletes need to, they do deserve to get paid how much
Yeah.
work we put in and how much we put our body on the line. And there are a lot of people out there who don't believe that, but I think it is a good way to like tell the athlete to reward them
Hmm.
somewhere or tell them thank you for how much work they put in. You know, but I think it is going to be good. Help. I think it's going to help keep some of the younger guys. I feel like before NIL, a lot of young guys want to go to the league quick. They want to go to
Right.
overseas or just trying to you know get money or get paid playing basketball. But I think this is a way of just keeping them kind of like in school to
Right.
say, and just getting them, the experience. Because college experience is different. It's definitely different than a pro experience. Being in college is different. It's way more love. I've seen a lot of older guys. Who come back and like, man, they miss this.
Mm.
Being a college athlete. It's all love, it's all love over you just having a good community who like stand behind you. You ain't gonna have that anywhere else, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's good for the younger guys.
The other aspect is starting when the new year starts July 1st. You guys are going to have shared revenue now. Being a part of this as well, what just goes through your mind knowing that for the standpoint, obviously, it's going to kind of get settled by themselves, however that gets worked out. But know that you've been a part of now the NIL transition and the shared revenue portion all in your career. How has that been like just experiencing all these different changes throughout your career in that aspect?
Um, it is interesting, but at the same time, I kind of understand, you know, kind of like the idea they got going on with the share revenue,
Hmm.
but also, you know, I don't really know too much about it, or I don't really want to speak too much about it to say,
Sure.
but it is going to be. I think it's going to change up in a couple of years. To be honest, I feel like they're just kind of experimenting, seeing how it goes, and seeing the pros and cons of it.
Mm.
Kind of like you said with the NIL first when it first came out. They see how you win, and it's absurd how much some of these kids asking to play in the college, which is I understand you gotta know your brand and just try to get your money, get your your worth. But at the same time, some players gotta be realistic with themselves and just kind of like look in the mirror and figure out, if they really deserve to repay that amount.
Right.
But I think the show revenue is definitely going to change in a couple of years, and it's going to be interesting to see how or where it goes.
Absolutely, man. Well, Felix, I got a couple questions before I let you go. One of
Okay.
which is we were talking a little bit backstage before the show started, and we were discussing about how your offseason's gone, and just the fact that Rick Barnes always has you guys working. You guys are one of the hardest working groups in all of America. When you talk about the
hmm
culture at Tennessee, what makes the culture so special at Tennessee?
It's just there's something we say is it's not about me. That it's I am. That's what we say. It's I am am. So it's an acronym, and it's just implant like just put it in every new player, just teaching them like Tennessee basketball is not about just yourself. It's not about personal goals. It's about a team goal, a team. Everything we do together. It's we grow together. We go through adversity together, and we fight together. And it's just not having selfish guys on the team. It's just building good chemistry,
Mm,
and it is definitely one of the hardest practices you ever been in your life. And I tell the other guys, it is hard, but it's good work.
hmm.
And you go anywhere else, you don't do this. That separate us from any other team in the country.
I love it. Felix, I have one final question for you. It's the question like wrapping up each and every single interview with. Let's talk about your legacy. Obviously, in 1 year from now, you'll be moving on from Tennessee, and then one day in the future, later on down the road, you'll be moving on from basketball. When you do end this career off at both Tennessee and then basketball in the future, what do you want to be remembered for what you've accomplished both on and off the court?
On the court, I just want to remember as one of those, good guys that just love people, have good connections with people, both, coaches, teammates, managers, wherever it is to help, the program the both programs I've been in,
Mm,
and just being a good soul,
mm.
to think about. And outside of basketball, just being a good, I would say, good brother, good son, good friend, and just being a good person in general.
I love that answer, Felix. Well, Felix, I appreciate you for taking time to come on today, man. It's been a blessing and honor having you on here, and I cannot wait to see what God's got in store for you this upcoming season. Of
Yes, sir. Appreciate your time too, man.
course, you're always welcome on, man. God bless.
Yeah, God bless you too.
I appreciate everybody for tuning into the interview. I'll have it clipped up, edited out, and then posted on my YouTube channel very, very shortly. I appreciate you all for tuning in once again, and I will see you guys later on. I will have a boxing show coming up at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If you guys want to tune in for that. As for my next basketball show, it most likely will be next week as of now, but I'll keep you guys posted on when that goes down. So I appreciate you guys all for tuning in today. Once again, have an incredibly blessed rest of you guys Wednesday. May God bless you guys all, and I will see you guys tomorrow, or see you guys later if you guys are tuning in for boxing. I'll see you guys later. SchuZ out.